This week I spent a few days testing different solutions for parallax scrolling for my 2D game. What is parallax scrolling? Parallax scrolling is all about creating depth in a 2D environment. All games from the 80s and 90s use it extensively, because the hardware was not powerful enough to handle 3D worlds. But even today, many modern games still make use of this effect to produce depth. In 2D side-scrolling games, this method scrolls the background and foreground layers at different speeds, creating the illusion of depth. Layers being on the back move more slowly, while layers close to the screen move faster. This effect seems quite easy to replicate, but there is more to it than what it looks. Let me talk a little bit more about it after the intro. Welcome back. If you are new to the channel, I make games, and you can download many of my games from the link in the description below. There are a few ways you can use to create this effect. The first one is to use 2D parallax scrolling with layers, with an orthographic camera, a camera that just shows everything in 2 dimensions. This is the most simplest way to do it. Make each layer move across the scene at different speeds. The farther the layer, the slower the movement, and the closest layers should move faster than the main layer where the player is located, like what you see on screen now. The second way is to fake parallax with a perspective camera in 3D. With many layers of objects on screen, those layers can be flat texture or 3D meshes. Because everything is in 3D, in this case there isn't much you need to do to make everything with depth, because everything has depth by itself. Even if I talk about a flat sprite, you can use flat layers like the ones I'm showing now. And if I rotate the camera, you can see each layer, each sprite being drawn in perspective. But there are some things you need to consider in this case. I'm using a camera with a very narrow field of view. This will show my scene as close as the orthographic camera. If you decide to convert this view into a 2.5 dimension environment, you can change the camera field of view to a more wide one. A wider field of view will increase the perspective distortion. Objects closer to the camera appear much larger than those farther away. This exaggerates the sense of depth. Also, parallel lines like walls or roads start to converge more sharply as they move away from the camera. So if I want to achieve this effect with flat sprites like the floor, we have two options. One is to rotate the sprite 90 degrees and put every sprite on top, like what we expect in real life. Or we can rotate the floor some amount so the camera distortion will make it feel like a proper floor. It all depends what is your objective. In my case, for this game, I'm not going to make the game look like 2.5D. Aligning every object to the camera and position sprites at the proper depth will take longer than just flat view, so this saves me considerable amount of time. And since I'm using an orthographic camera, I will fake the depth with parallax scrolling. There are quite many more things implemented this week, like areas. These are used for collision detection, triggers, and other things I may try later. It looks easier to add new areas, but actually I had to rewrite the code a few times. Initially my areas were linked to different layers, but that meant that every layer will have many different areas, so it was very hard to pick one area for editing. After prototyping the idea for a few hours, I found that these implementations make it very hard and confusing to the workflow, so remove the link between layers and areas, and now areas are independent. Selecting each area is much easier and less time consuming. Also, I added functionality to freeze sprites in place, so I cannot select them by mistake, making the level editor easier to handle this way, especially when many dozens of sprites are on screen. And that's it for this week. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. If you want to support my work, please click like and subscribe, and click on the notification bell so you do not miss my next update. Thank you so much for watching my journey. See you next week.